Charlie Brown. Oh, come on, Charlie Brown.
I knew that would make you laugh, Kyle. I knew you would have fun with that
What
intro.
an opening.
What an opening.
Wow.
Kyle, we did it. We're here.
I love it, baby.
We're here. Thank you for being here, Kyle Johnson. Thank you, everyone who's listening to the OhHello podcast, who's watching us on YouTube, who is a subscriber on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We appreciate you. With us today, we have a very handsome father, husband, professional. Who are you? Why are you here?
Wow, what an introduction. And I love the music, like you said, and I love the call outs to all the platforms you're on. You're just like, multi-platform, interdimensional, multi-talented. That's crazy, Jeremy. Wow. Cool. I feel like I can't live up to all of this. So yeah, my name's Kyle Johnson. I am how would I say? I'm a passionate technological professional. I've done many things over the years.
You're a PTP.
Yeah. Right now, I'm at Adobe, and I'm a go-to-market strategist for our Express and Substance products. Prior to that, I was in our document cloud doing things with Adobe Sign, being a little more technical. Prior to that, I was working with you in Ad Cloud many years ago, doing things like programmatic television. Prior to that, I was at the Ad Council, making Smokey the Bear ads and crash test dummy stuff. Yeah, and
You've
I
spoken at a handful of universities and conferences.
I have, yeah. I've spoken at Northwestern. I've spoken at Penn. Done a bunch of stuff. I don't really know. Like, if someone's like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "Well, you just got to get to know me." So hopefully we can do that today. They can actually answer that question for themselves.
And a video game maker. That's pretty impressive
Yes.
too.
Yeah. In my spare time, that is true.
So with all of those skill sets, with all of those tools that you have, Kyle, how would you characterize those particular skill sets that you're going to be sharing with the OhHello community?
Yeah. Growing up, I always knew that like I was a little bit different. Like, some people struggle with like disability or things like that. And I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD myself until I was an adult. So I always was like, into a million things at once. I always called myself a jack of all trades, master of none. And I ended up using that to my advantage. And I've always found it relatively easy for me to juggle multiple things at once and try to be in multiple places at once and just try to learn as much as I could. And what I ended up doing was taking something that was, pretty hard to grow up with when I was, younger and, in elementary school, middle school. I'd always get back like on my report cards, it would always say like, Kyle needs to stop talking as much. Kyle needs to pay more attention.
Sounds so
And
familiar.
I know, right? And I parlayed that into when I was older, just using my energy for good and making sure that I was like up to date on, everything within the industry that I'm working on, or just keeping abreast of like the news within my industry or related industries and be like, that's like a really cool concept. I pride myself within my friend groups of being like the person that was like, this is going to be big, like a couple, like in the next couple of years. And, more often than not, like 2 or 3 years later, my friends are like, Kyle, you were right. And usually, I'm getting laughed at originally when it happens.
Laugh
Like,
with.
yeah, laugh with, I guess. For example, like I just hit I think my 12-year anniversary on Reddit. And I used to like go on Reddit all the time when I was like,
You're
and
1 year away from being a man.
I know. And in the Jewish tradition, of course, yes. And people used to laugh at me about like being a Redditor. And now like everyone's mom is on Reddit, and it's like they're about to IPO and stuff like that. Not to say like, oh, I was on Reddit. It's a social media platform. Lots of people are on it. But like the thing I like to bring to my professional self is this ability to, focus on multiple things at once and really make sure that I'm able to pay attention to, multiple things happening. So
Yeah, that makes sense. What would you tell 20-year-old, 25-year-old Kyle when it comes to mentorship, when it comes to just your 25-year-old self? What feedback, what advice would you give yourself?
man,
Deep, real deep, Kyle.
I'd probably tell myself to work at any startup you can and take more risks. But professionally, I mean, like, I think I did decently well. I would probably tell myself it like I think for certain times when I was younger, I was working really hard. I didn't necessarily know it would pay off. And I think I would tell myself to trust myself more and to have a little more, confidence. Confidence is something that you can either, I guess it comes naturally to some people, or you can learn it over time. And people say like fake it until you make it. As I've become an adult and as I've had children myself, as you mentioned, one of my titles that I really love is being a dad. I found out that nobody knows what they're doing, even at like the highest levels of companies that I've been at. Like no one really knows what they're doing. So I guess the one thing I would tell myself is like, you know, you're okay. Just work hard. You'll be fine. Have confidence in what you're saying and what you're doing, and it'll be okay.
Well said. Well said, Kyle. With your experiences, because you've worked at both startups and incredibly well oiled technology companies, who are some of the mentors that you've picked up along the way, whether it's in a professional setting,
Yeah.
personal setting?
So I'll do two mentors from my personal life and one like celebrity that I looked up to a lot. One from my personal life is my eighth grade teacher, Mr. Frank. And Mr. Frank was a mentor to me because he was the first teacher that told me like it was okay to be different. So connecting to how I was what I mentioned earlier about growing up in middle school and elementary school, my teachers were like, you got to be like different than you are if you want to be like okay and succeed. I remember Mr. Frank in the early days of his class was like, if you want to doodle in the margins of your paper while you wait, and when you take notes, it's totally fine. And like I remember thinking, like, this is my 13-year-old brain. I'm like, wait, what? That's okay. And what he really was saying was like, as long as you get your stuff done, like it doesn't matter how you get there, it just needs to be okay. And also that reminds me of like the greatest compliment that anyone ever gave me was I was in a I was in a basketball tournament when I was in college, and it was a 3-on-3 tournament, and the ref told me your style is very unorthodox but effective. And I was like, "Oh, thanks." And I learned it's from like a Bruce Lee movie from like Game of Death or something. But like ever since I heard that, I'm like, yeah, that is me to a T. Like it's okay to be a little different and still and you'll make it. So that Mr. Frank was great there. A celebrity that I really looked up to is Bill Russell, and I really loved that Bill Russell was a player coach. He has 11 NBA championships as the center on the Boston Celtics, and he's been awesome. Like he passed away, I think, a couple of years ago, and that hit me really hard because he was a trailblazer in the NBA for civil rights and integration. He was a trailblazer for his team, and he was a trailblazer for like this massive multi-billion-dollar organization that exists today. And without him, putting in the extra work, he didn't just say like I'm the best player and like I like need the biggest salary and stuff like that. He said I'm the best player and I'm also going to coach this team at the same time. I'm going to take on more responsibility and have us achieve greater heights. So from him, I suppose what I got is you know being a trailblazer is something that is a good thing. You should always try to find some place where you can make a difference that, maybe it's a smaller like organization or something like that. And, if you are good at something and you are the best person on your team, it's not necessarily an opportunity to like slack off. Like it's an opportunity for you to maybe make your team even greater. he was a mentor for his teammates in many ways, once he became, the elder statesman on the team. And, that's something that anybody can do within their organization.
You've been a mentor to many, and you're a trailblazer. So what are some ways and characteristics that embody Kyle Johnson that you're going to be bringing to the OhHello community? And also, with that said, as you know, there are several dozen different charities that we're integrated in inside our platform. With that, like, what charities are near and dear to your heart and why?
Sure. I think, like yourself, I think we've bonded over this before, but I think I'm a pretty empathetic person. I try to have like a high EQ when I can, and I try to think about how other people are feeling and put myself in their shoes. I try not to judge the first time I hear people, either speak or they're. I don't necessarily want to, just take someone at face value. So being able to empathize with these individuals who might not know what they're doing at that given point, but they just want to try hard and they want to make a difference at their company or just within their own personal lives, I suppose. Like that's all I need to really connect with someone, and I appreciate that when people are open, and I try to be open in comparison or as well. So a charity, man, there's lots, but when you're on like Jimmy Fallon or something, they're always like, and this is my movie that I'm like hawking.
I haven't been on Jimmy Fallon personally.
Yeah.
However,
when you're on Jimmy Fallon, no. No, the charity that I want to plug is a charity that I'm actually on the board for. It's called CAPE, Chicago Arts Partnerships and Education. And what it does is it brings arts into the school curriculum. So you've probably heard of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Well, it's been discovered that STEAM is actually better. It's when you add art into that, because you get better learning outcomes when you add art into, let's say, your math lesson or your history lesson. Growing up, the work you probably remember the most is when you made like a diorama about like the War of 1812 versus your teacher just going, the War of 1812 was in 1812. Bad example, but so yeah, CAPE is in, I think, more than 30 schools within the greater Chicago area. It's been going for more than 20 years now. We have teaching artists that are embedded in classrooms across the Chicago area. So for me, that's the one that really is near and dear to my heart. But in the platform, any charity that really gives back to the youth is something that I think is something that's good for people to select.
love it.
OhHello itself is a way to give back to those. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone younger than you, but it's a way to give back to the younger generation and people who have less experience. So anything where you can give back to those who might not have as much experience is good with me.
You rock, Kyle. Well, Mr. Johnson, I want to be very conscious of your dinner plans. You've got 2 little kids. You've got LeBron in the background. You've got your wife. So with that said,
Good grief.
thank you, Kyle. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And there's LeBron. All right, Kyle, thanks so much. Thank you, OhHello community. Until the next one.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah.